Welcome to the River City Church podcast and a message by our lead pastor, Jason Powers. Our prayer is that this message would inspire and encourage you, build your faith, and point you to the life-changing love of Jesus. May you enjoy the goodness of God as you follow him today.
Hi, everybody. I am glad that you're here. We're going to begin with our confession today, but before we do, just take a second. I just want you to take a breath, right? It's crazy outside. It's cold. We're not used to that, right? 18 minutes of winter. It's here. We get to enjoy it. You got anxiety that you brought in with you. Maybe you tried to leave it at the door, but you haven't. It's still there. It's okay. There's room here. You're fine. Some of you may have joy. You may just have delight coming out of your ears. That's okay. Wherever you are, the Lord is ready and willing to meet you there. So our confession as his church is, we are badly broken. Yes, you are. Grace and peace to you. We started this year looking at the mission of the church. And specifically, we've said there's the church, which is like all the believers and followers of Jesus throughout time and space and history all around the world at all time. And then there are congregations, and River City RC&B is a congregation of Jesus's church. And so we've said we find our place in the broader movement of his church. So when we talk about our mission, the mission of River City Church, it's not as fundamentally distinct from other places. If you go to, the Springs Church or Green United Methodist Church, behind it all is going to be this similar emphasis on similar things. And what we've said, the way we express our unique mission at River City, you want to know what River City is about? We say River City is a church for New Braunfels, authentically experiencing and expressing God's love in our lives and community. So what are we about? We are a church for New Braunfels. We saw in Jeremiah chapter 29 that God sent his people Israel. They had the promises, they had the temple, they had all of that. And God said, all of that trapping stuff is not enough. What you're called to do is be a light to the world. You're called to be blessed and then be a blessing to the world. And what he said is, when you cease being able to be a blessing in your place, you're able to or not, when you stop being a blessing in the place that God has sent you, what he said is, we'll send you somewhere else to teach. So he sent them to Babylon. And what he told his people in Babylon is, settle down because you're going to be there for a while. He said, plant gardens. He said, give your sons and daughters in marriage. And he said, have them give theirs in marriage. So now we realize we're talking about a grandparent length experiment that we have. And so God sends his people into a world that is watching and waiting. And what we saw last week is that our first mission, the most important thing that we are called to do. In fact, it is the thing that we are called to do, that we are supposed to do, that without which everything else falls apart. We said the beginning and most important aspect and part of our mission is to experience intimacy with Jesus. The first part of being a Christian, the very central idea behind this thing that we do, is to know that you in particular and specifically, and us generally, but also individually, are deeply loved by Jesus to a degree and with a capacity that we can't fathom. And really, we said nothing about the Christian experience goes much unless we can get that. If we get that part wrong, everything else that flows out of that will be off, will be different. So that's our first thing. And my hope is that you have begun pressing into intimacy with Jesus. I got lots of sunset photos this week. Keep them coming. Here's the thing that I realized. Sunsets are great. I'm more of a sunrise person just because the way that it hits on the windows in my room, right? So I've got a lot of those. I'll take your sunrise pictures too. The idea is, are you slowing down to encounter and to meet with Jesus? And the idea is when we meet with Jesus, this experience of love begins to permeate our being. Now, my guess is if I start talking about Jesus's desire to love you, some of the older people, maybe some of the people that have been around a little while are going to start getting twitchy, right? That's nice, but you better tell them to be good, Pastor. You got to tell them Jesus loves them, right? So what do we do with that? Is it enough to just sit there and just go, I am so loved, bro? You can't fathom how much Jesus loves me. I feel a little bit bad for all of you because clearly I'm his favorite. So my hope is that you have the same experience with that, right? But what we've said is our mission is to experience and express God's love into our lives and community. And so what does that look like? That's the question. How do we do? Once we get to this place where we know that we're loved and we can't bypass that. We can't go around that. You can't fake it. You can't hurry up. You can't pretend it's something that it's not. You simply have to be there until you are convinced that you are loved by our Almighty God. And then what Jesus says, and we see this in John chapter 13, he's got all his disciples and he said, I'm going away, but I'm going to show you. And what he does is he washes their feet, this symbolic expression of love, of cleansing. And he says, I'm going to go and you can't do that. And we saw last week, he said, you can do nothing apart from me. So stay with me. So remain in me. And right before he said that, in John chapter 13, verse 34, he said this. He said, I'm giving you a new command, to love one another. Now, let me stop real quick and say this, because we stop right here, love one another, is why there are a lot of church people that get real twitchy about saying just the command is to love, right? Because we have taken love one another and we have turned it into a giant, steaming, smoldering soup of nothing, right? Love one another roughly means have a positive feeling in the general direction of someone for some amount of time. And then when you have that feeling for some amount of time, probably shorter than longer, what love says is when you've had that few minutes, you should base as many of your future decisions on that experience alone. How's that sound to you? See, when Jesus said, I'm giving you a new command that you love one another, he didn't just say, now go figure out what love looks like. Go do whatever makes you feel good. What he says is, they'll know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. He says, just as I have loved you, love one another. So I don't think it's a stretch, and if it is, I'm sorry, that means we're going to have some tension here today. I don't think it's a stretch to say most of what passes for love in our current human experience would be significantly removed from the kind of love that Jesus expressed. Most of the love that we experience today has to do with negotiations of taking, transaction. I'll take that and maybe I'll give a little bit, but at the end of the day, I take what I want and I give what I want. And this is why this command sounds hollow. We live in an age and in a cultural moment where people are skeptical of love. And the reason they're skeptical of love is because the whole idea, like this generation was taught by the previous generations. So whatever backlash against love we're seeing right now, it was brewing previously. So we've come to a cultural moment where because of what we've seen of love, we have exchanged marriage for some sort of social arrangement. Maybe we have even gone to the JP, we've got the thing, we've done our thing, but our relationship to each other doesn't look much like the kind of self-giving, self-sacrificing, humbling you first kind of love and experience that Jesus talked about. And you wonder, well, how does our understanding of love get so off course, right? Well, do you know every single time it comes on, The Bachelor will be one of the top shows. Oh my gosh, could it be true love? No, it's not true love. They've known each other for 8 minutes. You take 7 perfect physical specimens of people, learn nothing real about any of them for weeks, send them on outrageous trips, and then comes like, I can't tell whether I love Johnny or Hank the most. You don't love either of them. That's not what love is. It's funny. I'm not going to ask how many people think it's funny because you were entrenched in the whole season. We can't watch it and not be impacted by it. And even this, right? Like we're talking about love always in the context of romantic relationships. Listen, I got a teenage daughter. I got a son in college. He's figuring this out. What does it look like? What does it mean to be loved? And I just want to tell you, most of it looks like that. I have to be pretty enough to find some other pretty person who is willing to take from me the things that matter most for their own well-being so that I can do the same, so that we can extract as much pleasure from each other until it's done. And then what do we say? We've fallen out of love. And there's very little of love to do with it at any point. Do you think that's what Jesus came and said? They'll know you're my disciples by the way that you use each other up and leave each other discarded by the side of the road. See, when we talk about love, the first place we can go is husband and wife, marriage and stuff like that. But what about the neighbor across the street that you don't know because he's annoying or because he put the wrong sign in his yard in October or because he hurt your feelings or because he doesn't mow his yard, or whatever it is. So we can acknowledge that we've got some screwed up ideas of love. And yet we come to this and we find wrapped up in what it means to not only just be a Christian, not only to be a follower of Jesus, but to be a part of a group and a community of people who say, together, we are following Jesus. And so we've got this that is close to our hearts that we chase after. We write songs about it. Love. All you need is love. Love is a many splendored thing. Love is everywhere. It's all over. But we're far off. And our calling from Jesus is to love, to experience God's love. And so what I would say is, friends, I want to talk especially like if you're here and you're single. Maybe you're single again. Maybe you're single again. Maybe you've always been single and you're young and you're just waiting. I would say before you have been loved by someone who does not want to take anything from you, Jesus, do not trust your love to a schlep like me or someone else. They can't handle your heart. Your heart is too valuable and too precious to Jesus. You need to know, right? So we have this command to experience God's love and then to give it away. And what a world outside that is watching, our neighbors, our loved ones, what they want is not polish. Nobody that I know of has ever come and said, I really would like to hear about Jesus at your church, but you don't have enough smoke machines. Jason, you can barely read the screen at the back of there. You don't know what time it is half of the day. I know all of these things. I've never had someone leave because we weren't polished enough, but I have had people leave and tell me that they didn't feel like they were seen. They didn't feel like they were known. And some of that we can have the conversation, like what does it mean to be seen? We can talk about that. But what I hear over and over and what I see in my experience is not that people are bothered when we disagree with them. They're bothered when we reject them because we disagree with them, especially when this calling to love is so central. So what does it look like? How does authentic love that points people to Jesus look. The first thing we have to settle this. Are you ready? This is the thing without which we have nothing. This is the thing that we can't get around. If we don't land on this, we're going to be stuck on a lot of other stuff down the road, right? Here's the deal. Spiritual fruit is the visible evidence of authentic intimacy with Jesus. Do not come quoting scripture verses to me with hatred and tell me that you are following Jesus. Listen, you're welcome to hate whoever you want. Just don't blame it on Jesus. He loves all the people that you hate. You work on it. I'd encourage you to work on it with him, but work on it, right? Because here's what I mean. Here's what I want to show you. Some of you are probably plant people, and I'm going to show you this. You're going to be like, oh, I know, right? It's okay, right? If you're not one of those, can you identify this tree?
Dead.
You're like, it's a dead tree. It's a winter tree. It is, yes, right? Good branches. Looks like it's got like stout. But here's what I want to know. Can I build a fire out of that wood? You can't build fire out of softwoods. They smoke, right? Can you build a fire out of that wood? Well, let's show another picture. Same kind of tree. Now you know what kind of wood it is. It's apple wood. Makes great bacon. You should smoke your meat with apple wood, right? Do you know how you were able to tell the one from the other? The fruit. In the same way. Now, if I go to a peach tree and I write the word apple on it, does that make it an apple tree? No. You can tell a tree by its fruit. You cannot tell a tree by what degree it has. You cannot tell what kind of tree it is by whether it is more Reformed or Wesleyan theologically. You can tell whether a person is connected to Jesus by their capacity to love people. Spiritual fruit is the evidence. So our responsibility then is to understand this, right? Because maybe some of you are like, you talk about love all the time, talk about being good, talk about right. Because what we need is not people to be really right. No, I would say you're exactly right. What we need is the people to stop loving in that broken, janky, ugly. Sure, it feels neat, nice right now, but it doesn't save anything, does it? It exposes everything to hurt and pain and discussion and frustration, all that stuff, right? So what if we try something different? What if we look at the world and we stand there and be like, we got to fix our country because it's broken. What if it's broken because we're not doing it right? What did Jesus say? You're the salt of the earth. You know what salt does? It preserves, it flavors, it does all this. I'm telling you, if you look out at the world and just go, oh, it's broken. There's so much hate and division and separation. Us. It doesn't come from anywhere else. We on grace and love into the world. And we got to understand it. So how do we do that? We'll turn to Galatians because Paul is going to tell us, and you maybe are going to like it and maybe you're not, but it's going to be truth one way or another, right? So here we start. Starting in verse 16, Galatians 5, Paul says, I say then walk by the Spirit and you will certainly not carry out the desire of the flesh. So now we have a duality, right? Flesh and spirit. Walk by the Spirit and you won't fulfill the desires of the flesh. So right now what we have is this identification, flesh and desire. Think about the things that you desire. Think about the things that you want. Have you ever been willing to make somebody uncomfortable for what you want? I'm wearing my glasses today because I had an issue with my eyes this morning, but typically I hate to wear them because they're bifocals, which means that I have to do this like when I drive all the time, which is weird. So typically when I put on my glasses in the middle of the night in the evening, my day is done because I'm not going out again. But sometimes I really want ice cream. But I've already put my glasses on. And so do you know what I do? I force my 16-year-old daughter to go get ice cream with me because she's awesome, but also because she wants ice cream. Now, I love her and I hope there are other things, but if that is a model of our transaction of love, you can see when it's not ice cream, but it's sex, or it's money, or it's approval, or it is obedience. Do you see how a transactional view of love, and I would tell all my teenagers or wherever they might be listening, anybody who says, if you love me, you will, is neither interested in you nor your love. Hit it. Side note, I love having y'all in here, by the way. That's so good. We're glad. Right? You got a duality, the spirit and the flesh. The flesh desires what is against the spirit, and the spirit desires what is against the flesh. They are opposed to each other so that you don't do what you want. But if you are led by the spirit, you are not under the law. So the idea is, sometimes I've noticed in my own house when I go around and things are tense, I've got the girls are fighting, or me and Natalie are tense, or there's something going on, right? What I find myself is suddenly in the middle of the afternoon, I find myself ravenously hungry, and my flesh says, eat all of the food, then you'll feel better. And you know what? For a long, long time, I did just that. So that, you know what? Every time something is remotely uncomfortable, my flesh says, eat and that'll be better. You know what my spirit says? You're not hungry, you're angry. You're not hungry, Jason, you're bored. And as long as you keep covering up the real thing, the boredom, Jason, you just need to tell your wife that what she said hurt your feelings. You don't need a ham sandwich about that. Can I have both? Does it both work, right? My flesh says, I need, I want. My spirit says, you have. You are loved. You have enough in this moment. My flesh says, they hurt your feelings. My spirit says, they don't know. Forgive them. But I don't want to forgive them. They're terrible. I thought you said you were badly broken and deeply loved. I thought that was this, badly broken and deeply loved. Do we withhold love from the broken? And what does that mean for us? Have you ever felt like that, though? The flesh and the spirit. I'm doing the thing. I don't want to do the thing. I want to read you something by a guy. This should make you feel better, because this is someone who actually wrote the Bible. And notice how he talks about the spirit and the flesh in Romans 7, verse 14. Again, same duality, for we know that the law is spiritual, but I'm of the flesh, sold as a slave under sin. And now he describes what that looks like in verse 18. I know that nothing good lives in me. Listen, do you know why I'm off of social media during this time for my fast? Because if I look at it, I'm going to get hooked. I'm going to see someone say something that I don't like, and it's going to be dumb, and I'm going to have to fix it. So what I do is I just don't go there. And you know what? I go, Lord, I don't know how you're going to do it, but you're going to have to fix the world without me for a little bit, because I'm just going to have to check out. And he's like, nope. I know that nothing good lives in me, that is in my flesh. I'm always going to want to defend myself. I am always going to want to fight you. I am always going to want to take from you as long as I think that you have what I need. And not only that, I'm going to get what I want. And then when I get what I want, I'm going to blame you for me having to fight for it so much. Probably not you, but me, maybe. If you have ever thought or called somebody else a monster because they're chasing after what they want in the same way that you are chasing after what you want, we may have jumped the shark. We may have missed, but so what do we find, right? I don't do the good that I want to do, but I practice the evil that I do not want to do. Have you ever wanted to do that? Have you ever wanted to just be nicer to your spouse or to your kids? Have you ever gone into work saying, this is going to be a great day today, and before you're through the door, that person is there, and you want to strike them, and maybe you do. Have you had that, right? Well, I'm encouraged to find out that the author of Scripture feels that same way. And what that tells me is that bearing good fruit will be a battle. It's not easy. It doesn't get easy. One of the chief of the Sioux Nation, his name was Sitting Bull. He said this: inside of me, there are two dogs. One is mean and evil, and the other is good, and they fight each other all the time. When asked which one wins, I answer, the one I feed the most. So listen, do you ever lament your spiritual depth? Do you ever read the scripture and go, why can't I respond like that? The reason you can't respond like that is because you don't respond like that. Because every opportunity that you have to accept someone saying something bad about you and responding in kindness or with love, you respond with anger or fear or hate or division or gossip or separation, or we say terrible things about people because people say terrible things about us, and we just won't opt out of the cycle. We just won't step out of the circle of destruction. And it's hard. So what we do is, like we talked about last week, we're created for intimacy with Jesus. So the more time that we spend there, the more that we find, I am loved. I don't have to be accepted by everybody. I can let that, listen, I haven't been on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or Twitter in weeks. I don't know what the heck's going on. You can't believe how blissfully ignorant I am right now in this very moment. It doesn't mean stuff's not happening. It just means that I woke up today and put my pants on and came here to see you talk about this, and it's okay. And what if it's just like that every single day? I mean, every single day. What if you just wake up and go to your school or to your work, and when someone's mean to you, just go, oh, wow, I would like to punch them in the face, but I'm not going to. I would sure like to jump on that thread on Facebook that's just saying all those terrible things about people. Oh, it's subtweeting. Nobody is smart enough to understand who we're talking about. That's dumb. We live in a world full of hate, and we've got a chance to opt out. And the less that we opt out, the less different we are. And the more we have to redefine what love means so that we fit, rather than just saying we have treated people like they work for. We have battled other people instead of ourselves. And that leads to the second part, right? Like that's the other thing, what the battle looks like. Well, in order to understand the battle, we have to describe does this feel heavy a little bit? I know. I love you. And the reason it feels heavy to me is because I get in by my flesh all the time. I want to stop doing that so that I can live victoriously better, so that the promises of Scripture aren't just some thing that I hope when I die I get. Because he said, you'll have today, kingdom of heaven's at hand, it's among you, it's present. Well, what if the reason it's not among us is because we're fighting just like people without Jesus? So who do we battle? Verse 19. Important word. Galatians is after Romans. Important word here. In verse 19, it says, now the works of the flesh are obvious. This thing that we're about to read are works. It's not fruit. The apple tree cannot, have I said this in this service? The apple tree cannot wake up today and just go, I think today feels like a great day, right? Think I'm gonna have some persimmons today, right? No, the apple tree wakes up and bears apples. That's what it is. That's what its identity is. It cannot choose otherwise. What this says is the works of the flesh. These are not fruits of the flesh. These are works. These are choices that we can make and unmake if we're willing. So to say, the works of the flesh, I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to come back, okay? The works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, moral impurity, promiscuity, idolatry, sorcery, hatreds, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and anything similar. Here's the good news. You can choose or not choose innings. The reason that we get in those isn't because we can't choose them. It's because we don't want to choose them, because we have desires. One of the biggest ones that we struggle with today is this idea of like the Christian sexual ethic, right? Like what Jesus just proved, right? Like Christians, they're just so uptight all the time and it can't be right. Here's what I would ask. How is the not Jesus sexual ethic working? We super pleased? right? Like with the way that it's going, right? Oh, and we just talked about, several years ago, like the Supreme Court undermined the condition of marriage. A good marriage, has been on the take ever since then. You think if the Christian marriage ethic was just thriving and killing and striving it all away, you think they would have just been like, hey, that looks really awesome and we really want what they got, but we're going to try to do something different. No. We turn love and relationships selfish. Things to take. Well, I don't want to give to you. I want for me, right? And so this is what we find. The battle that we face, right? The battle to bear fruit will be a battle. And the battle that we face will be intensely personal. We don't get to fight other people's battles of self-denial. You may not like the self-denial battle that someone else is in, but it's their battle. And you have a battle that you have to work with Jesus. Now, theirs may be much more heinous than yours. And we love to talk about, I think at the end of John 21, when Jesus is reinstating Peter, and he's like, Peter, like you're going to follow me, I'm going to lead you. He's like, well, what about that guy? I don't want that guy to have it better, right? So we're worried that someone else is sinning in a different way than we are. And that gets us uptight, right? And Jesus is like, but I've got something for you. Like, you come sit with me. Like, let's talk about your thing. Because here's the thing with the sexual ethic. Show me a relationship where I can show up and say, you give me what I want. And in return, I will give you what I want. Commitment forever? Well, that's just dumb. But can I draw you close to me so that I can have sex when I want it? But if it gets really bad, I'll just split and go, no. Marriage, sex between a husband and a wife, like that's, and here's the thing I would just tell you. I've had sex both ways. One way, gloriously, radically better. There's something about, listen, my wife's acceptance of me is something that I don't worry about if I get fat or balder. You're like, not likely or whatever. Do you know what my wife doesn't want? To lay in bed wondering if I'm thinking of someone else. Real or on the TV screen. And so Jesus says, I know you really like it. Part of my wisdom, God says, part of my wisdom is that I'm going to make it good, really good. But for you to experience the goodness of all of it, you should wait until it is a gift from someone who will never turn their back on you or leave you. But as long as we present it as something that everybody just needs to make sure we take, right? Like everybody's getting, and the best is like, well, it's consensual. Great. So like if you and another person get together and agree to steal a car and you stand before the judge, you're like, well, we agreed, we consented. The battle is, will I live my life the way that Jesus says leads to fruitfulness? Or will I do my best? And again, I would point to the fruit around us and just go, hey, how are we doing? I'm not condemning you. There's no judgment here. What I'm telling you is like, evaluate, is there more for you? Does God have more for you? Are you insecure in your relationships? Are you insecure? Do you wonder if the person's only what? It's not supposed to be that way. We weren't supposed to chase, this feels good for me now. Do you know why? Because what feels good for me now is going to change tomorrow. And so what I want my wife to know is when the seasons change and your hair thins out and your skin gets bad and you get sick, you're still beautiful to me. Guys, what do you think she wants? To be available to you or to be everything to you? That's a daughter of the king. That's a daughter of the king. You should treat her likewise. Ladies, you want your husband to be strong? Tell him he's strong. Get out of the way. You want him to lead? Guess what? He'll do it different because he's not you, right? believe in the others, give to the others. This is not what this is about, but it kind of is. Right? Because I just know everything in my house would be better if it was exactly the way that I wanted it. But you know what the problem with that is? When I lived on my own and everything was exactly the way that I wanted it, you know what I did? I went looking for something else. See, that's what flesh tells you. Flesh tells you that you're settled out there somewhere. Flesh tells you that you need money or an identity or whatever. That's not what you need. You don't know what you need. We don't know what we need, right? But here it just says, look, is this what you want to realize? And okay, so we backed up and maybe you're in here right now, you're like, you're telling sinners about sex, right? That ain't all that he's talking about. Now I got to fight, right? I mean, bro, idolatry? You're like, yeah, well, I don't have any idols. Yeah, right. You ever been take something from someone because they had what you want? You care more about the thing than the person, right? What about sorcery? You're like, well, they were clear on that one. Hey, we don't know no sorcerers. Do you get freaked out if your horoscope isn't what you want? Biblically, that's sorcery. It's sorcery. You can explain it, set it away. That's fine, but it says, right? And do you know why? Because in Genesis 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And he says, and it was formless and void, and the darkness was over the surface of the deep. And then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then he said, let there be water above and below, and it was. And he said, let there be dry land. And then on day 4, you know what he said? He said, let there be bodies to fill the sky. Let there be the bright sun in the day and the moon in the night. And let there be stars to mark that. Do you know why I don't go to the horoscope? Because my God said, I got this. Do you know why we do go to horoscopes? Because I can dismiss my horoscope and go, oh, well, Mercury's in retrograde, but really I'm not mocking. I'm asking like truly, right? Because Jesus said, go out and I'll conquer the world. Just don't be afraid. But sorcery, factions. Oh, no, listen. No, truly, I have watched in the context of social media, people say things that they would never say to somebody's face. Church breaks my heart. I have watched ushers walk up and down these rows with a guest asking to sit in the middle 2 seats. Can we please make room? Oof. You sure you want me to preach still? They will know by the way that we love each other. And the way that we love each other is not by taking the sex and not giving the commitment. It's not by taking the feelings and giving away, right? I didn't go to my wife and say, I will stand with you until you're done giving things to me. I said, until death do us part. And I watched my grandparents die. And you know what? It was gross and I didn't want it. Never did they need each other more than in that moment. The biblical teaching on marriage is a fundamental picture of what life in the kingdom is supposed to be about. It is a picture of grace and peace and humility and serving each other. And if you're not married, that's okay too. You don't have to be married to be fulfilled in God's presence. He calls people to singleness, but you are not exempt from the call to love a world, and it will be costly. And some of us, that costliness will include inviting people to the table that we once felt should be outside because they're broken and we've withheld love. But for some, it will be exchanging a squishy kind of love that doesn't change or impact anything for a love that gets on the cross and calls us to follow and changes everything. Nobody gets to go, yeah, get him, Jesus. You and I, we're the ones that we're here for. The battle will be intensely personal, right? And so we have to say no to these things. Those things are not fruit, they're behaviors. And what happens is, as you say no to that sorcerer, and you just go, Lord, I'm leaving my what's it called? Horoscope. I'm leaving. I'm not talking. I'm not doing that, Lord. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to pray and you're going to lead me. What happens is you begin to have an experience and you begin to be filled and you begin to know God is involved in my life. God is here and he leads me. And it's weird. And sometimes I get it wrong, but maybe I get it right sometimes. But I go, what happens is we begin to get full and full and full and full until it starts to like squeeze out of us. It starts to like ooze out of us, come out of our pores. And that's this in verse 22, the fruit of the Spirit. This isn't some behavior. This isn't Jesus going, you better go get busy, start doing other things. This is saying, when you sit in the presence of Jesus until you are full, until you know, that's my King, that's my God, then you begin to be like that apple tree that doesn't have to bear down to bear apples. Listen, I talk a lot about, I'm a gardener. You know what I did to grow peppers this year? I amended the soil and I put water in the ground. And that's it. The pepper tree did all the work. But guess what? I get to stand there at the end and go, behold, look what I have done. I have mastered, right? The elements. Yeah, right. Nothing. When you wake up in the morning and you go, Jesus, I ain't going anywhere till I've had you. That is watering the garden and the soil in your heart. When you forgive someone the instant that they hurt you and you just go, I forgive you and we'll work through that later, you begin to water those seeds in your heart that grow into love. And let me just ask this. How would your relationships be if saturated with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control? It says the law is not against such things. I love in the NIV, it says, against such things there is no law. My first thought was like love and fruit of the Spirit is so punk rock, right? Like it is the ultimate in anarchy, right? Do you want to shake your fist at the powers that be, right? And just be like, you can't get me, right? I'm telling you, this example where we come together and we just go, the most important thing in my mind are this. Like, imagine this, okay? Imagine, now I want you to do this thought exercise. Imagine there are 10 people and you're one of them, okay? And these 10 people are in a room. And here are your examples. You're about to go into a room. And here's what I tell you. When you walk into that room, there will be 9 other people in that room. And each of them has something that is vital for your, not just your survival, but for your well-being. Each of them has something that you need to get from them, and they are going to be trying to get something from you. Don't you let them. Now you walk into that room. How do you think you feel in that room? Do you look at people and just go, oh, what's going on with you? No, skeptic, whoop, right? I'm not talking to you. You get nothing. Now, I want you to imagine that you stand outside in the room and somebody comes to you after and they just go, hey, everybody in that room has a need that they're hiding that they won't tell you for anything because they're embarrassed and they're ashamed. But I'm telling you, what you have, they need. So when you go into that room, you need to find what everybody's needed and just give them, and you'll have it. And listen, here's the thing, right? Because you just go, oh, but then what? Listen, here's the thing. You go in there and you just, if you see a need, you just meet it. And whenever you come out of that room, whatever you've given away, don't worry about it. We'll put it back. You'll be fine. Which of those rooms do you want to be in? The room where everybody's taking something, everybody's going to get something, everybody's distrustful of something, or the room where everybody walks in with something to give, a blessing to give? Now, imagine if there were 9 people in a room that were willing to give and only one person who came in to take. How much does it take to screw up the good mood in that room? Not much, does it? So we get to decide. Will we sit in the presence of Jesus until he enables us to love others who are very different from us? Or will we continue to run and continue to grow and continue to kind of escape and do my own thing? And will we just keep lamenting, why don't I have good peppers? Why? Good peppers are evidence of a good plant. If you're not bearing fruit, and listen, it's yeah, good luck. Patience, perfectly patient today, not a chance, right? We're growing. Ask somebody, do you see more of this in me today than yesterday, last week, than last year? Because the world's watching. And the clearest evidence of God working in our presence, the clearest evidence of Jesus in us and with us is the fruit that we bear. So stay connected to Jesus. You don't have, like that, that's it. Stay connected to Jesus. And then when you see somebody else, connect them to Jesus. Help them know that they are loved, that they are seen, that they have a place. And then as we do that, love and joy and peace and kindness and gentleness, not something we have to drum up and manufacture. These are things that will flow out of us, that will just grow ripe for the picking. Can you imagine somebody coming into this room hating Jesus, and face after face after face meets them with patience, with kindness, with hope, with a place? Jesus, you met us while we were far away from you, and you called us. And you invited us to learn from you. And you said you were gentle and humble in heart, and those are fruits. Lord, you invited us to be with you, to become like you. So we ask today that you would do that. I pray that you would help us to remain in you so that your Spirit can produce in us fruit that will bring you glory, the fruit that will cause a watching world to be drawn to you. And so, Lord, you know wherever we are. For those maybe who today, they don't know you at all, maybe the conviction that you would bring today is people haven't been following you. They have given up, or maybe they just never knew, but today is the day of salvation. Today is the day. I pray that in their heart, in a private moment, they would turn to you and just say, Lord, I want to bear fruit. I want to remain in you. And Lord, I pray for the rest of us. I am certainly walking in the flesh in areas. And I don't want to make the acts of the flesh about other people while the fruit of the Spirit is about me, Lord. So I pray that you would give me the grace to see my own blind spots. I pray that River City would be reflective of your goodness in our marriages, in our singleness, in our business, in the way that we encourage each other in the room as we actively seek to do battle with our flesh. We thank you, Jesus, for the way that you love us. Enable us to walk and stay in you today. We ask these things in your name and for your glory. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. River City Church is all about experiencing and expressing God's love in our lives and community, and we hope that you've been able to experience that today. As grateful as I am that you've spent this time listening in this morning, this podcast is no substitute for full participation in a local church. I love it when River City people listen to other pastors, but it is those who show up week after week, faithfully giving their support and time and resources that make all of this possible. If we can help you get connected to a local church, pray for you, or support you in any way, click the link in the description and let us know. If you'd like to financially support the ministry of River City, click the Give link on our website in the description. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to share this with your friends. Thanks so much for listening. May the Lord bless and keep you in all grace and peace.